What I want to talk to you today about is why customers matter. And I remember when this started, it was somewhere back in the early 1980s. And I was watching a video, Tom Peters' video, In Search of Excellence. But the one clip that had the most profound impact on me was a grocery store. It was a grocery store in Norwalk, Connecticut, called Stu Leonard's Dairy. And this place just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. You know, just watching this, because in terms of listening to customers, they were listening to customers in every possible way. They had suggestion boxes that were full every day. Why would the suggestion boxes be full? They might have thought something was going to happen, right? People would come in, customers would come in on Saturdays on their own time for focus groups to talk about how to improve things. Why? Because when they made a suggestion, by Monday or Tuesday, they could see the results of the suggestion. And they were interviewing Stu and his son, Stu Jr., and one of the questions that was asked was, how do you know when you have a satisfied customer? And what did Stu say? Yeah, when they come back. And I said, wow, that's really simple. What if all these companies and all these organizations that are trying to focus on customers had a way of calculating the economics associated with customer loyalty? Because most people who were doing this at this particular point were led by someone like Stu who'd started the business, or like a Herb Kelleher who at Southwest, it was part of the way they did things. But what about those organizations that needed to change? How would they know how to change? And if they saw the economics of it, would it be easier to change? So that's when I went on a mission of saying, let's show people why customers really matter. And one of the advantages of Harvard Business School is the fact that we get the doors open, we get a chance to talk with CEOs. So I started, like we normally do, went out to some CEOs and found out what they were saying. You know, you could find it in all the magazines. Our number one priority is customer satisfaction. Well, we got to really worry about customer satisfaction. They were also telling me the customer reigns. He or she is king or queen. They are paying the bills. It all starts with the customer. We got to be customer focused. And then we are committed to changing ourselves from a product to a solutions company. We've got to become much more focused on solutions than just out there selling products. You know, you could pick up any newspaper, any business magazine, and you'd find the CEOs in the mid-'80s talking about this. But as you know, in our cases, we don't stop with the CEO. It's often nice to go into the organization and find out what the managers think. And what the managers were telling us was, all we hear about is customer focus. But when it gets down to rewards, promotion, and the like, you better make budget. Now, what was the message here? Can you imagine that? Somebody putting pressure on the finances rather than on the customer. So there's something's not in sync here. And as this research started getting published and so forth, I would get invited to go out and work with some companies. And one of the companies I got a chance to work with was a large global air carrier. And when you work for an air carrier, it was really great. I got to fly first class and all the stuff like that. But at some point, I had to go back and give a presentation to the top management group. So I flew into the airport. I was going to give the presentation right at the airport. First class flight from Boston to that location. It was really good. Great meal, great service. Everything was perfect. We even pull into the gate. And as we pull into the gate, as the plane is always met by someone from the ground. Person comes on and said, would Professor Sasser meet the special service agent that's meeting the plane? And I'm saying, wow, this is great. However, I was having a little uncomfortableness because I was going to talk about customer service and customer focus, and these folks were really sort of showing me stuff I'd never seen before. And they were really doing it really outstanding, and I was sort of saying, what am I going to tell these folks? They are really out there doing great stuff. And this person met me as I got off the plane. She did a job of sort of herding me over to a golf cart. We got into the golf cart. We were through customs. There's a far right-hand lane we took. Passport, I just sort of waved it. We were down in baggage claim in about 10, 12 minutes. And I said, wow, this is unbelievable. I've never had it happen like this before. This is great. So I asked the woman, I said, this service that you're giving to me, do you give it to other folks? She said, sure. We have a frequent flyer program. And this frequent flyer program identifies our very best customers. And our very best customers often fly 1 or 2 times a week. Now, you're not in that category of a frequent flyer, but because you're talking with the top management group, you're in that category for the day. Now, first thing, is it okay to discriminate against in favor of your best customers? Can you use the information? You're not bothered by that? Nope. And not, what was that? Not yet? Not yet. Okay. And so they had provided service, and she was trained to handle this service. She was pumped because she had degrees of freedom she could have rented a limo. She could, just sit there and write the ticket on another airline if that were necessary. Anything it took to sort of to satisfy this customer at the very top end because they identified these folks. And so I kept quizzing her about this, and it was obvious they'd done a lot of homework. They were doing a lot of things. They understood the value of this customer to them. And after about 20 minutes, so I ran out of things to talk about. And the bags still hadn't arrived. And the first class folks had just came down, and I expected the bags to be there when the first class folks arrived. I knew getting there before the first class folks, they might not have met. The standard would probably be when first class arrives, have the bags there. First class folks came, no bags. Coach people came, no bags. Now we're all waiting, and it takes an hour before the bags arrive. I'm a little upset because I need to get on with my presentation, do the audio-visual stuff, get it checked out and so forth. But I'm a little happy too because I've got something to talk about. And so I'm holding this little story mentally in my back pocket, waiting for the appropriate time in my presentation. And at some point during the presentation, because the bags took an hour to arrive. It was an hour before, and I was late and rushing and so forth. But as I did my presentation, I started talking about the service bookends. The first encounter and the last encounter, and people really remember the service bookends. And as I started describing what had happened to me, I was very accurate. I told about everything and so forth. And up until this point, the faces were looking, all the executives were looking me right in the eye. And I started telling the story. And once I got past, it was a great flight, great meal, great service, great. And I started waiting and baggage handling. The eyes, no more eye contact. It's all gone. And so I told the story, and after the presentation, people came up to talk to me, and there was a person just standing over to the side. And when the last person finished, this person walks over and said, I'm responsible for baggage handling at the airport. And I said, I'm sorry, but I told exactly how it happened. I didn't make anything up. I thought you should know that because of just trying to prove the point that it's very complicated when you're in the airline business because there's so many interactions on a trip. Some of them under the airline's control, some of them not. But that last interaction could have a big impact. I just wanted to drive home that point. Sorry if I caused you any problem. He said, I'm not surprised it happened. And I said, what do you mean you're not surprised? He said, this is the last week of the month. This is the last month of the quarter. I have deliberately understaffed baggage handling to make budget. Now, what about that? I have deliberately understaffed baggage handling to make budget. First question is, did this person make budget? Probably did. Probably is a cost center. Probably a cost center. It was a cost center. And I suspect this person was rather close to either meeting or not meeting budget. And it also told me a lot about the pressures in an organization, and really this discontinuity between making budget and not making it. Not making it is bad. And not making it even by a little bit is bad. Making it is absolutely great. And therefore, this person did something because they were close. Now, if this person had been going to miss it by a wide amount, what would have happened? He would have thrown in the kitchen sink, right, to make sure it was easier to do it the next time. But because it was close, it has shot, he did this. What's the implication of this behavior? Does it have any consequences? Economic consequences. What are they? So someone who was on that airline at this time would consider flying another airline the next time he or she had a chance to fly. Yeah. But baggage handling, that's not going to affect my revenue, right? It's going to, whose revenue is that revenue that I've lost? Huh?
My best customer.
It's your best customer, but who gets credit for that revenue? Sales. Little sales arms all around the world would be affected. But me, baggage handling, no impact. In fact, it's going to make my job easier probably the next period because fewer people will be flying. And those who are flying will do what? Carry their bags. Right? And making it probably when everybody carries their bags, it's a much less positive experience for all of us. But why did you get this behavior? Why do we see this behavior? And as we laugh, it could be in any organization. Right? We're just not talking about a global airline. Just people do stupid things when the budget's out there. And people are trying to talk about the budget. Why does it happen? Do you think this person understood the revenue loss? That he had any idea of the negative consequences of his action? To the extent it might have the impact on, probably not. Probably a good person, trained in the organization to meet budget. And so what happened is we would go through this and people would say, you know, that customer you're talking about, the customer reigns as long as doesn't cost anything. And then they would tell us, becoming a customer-focused solutions company. Let me guess who you heard that from. And what's the message here? Who do they think we heard it from? The CEO, person at the top. And we'd say, well, what do you mean about this? They say, well, you know, this stuff about becoming customer-focused, moving towards solutions, that's just another form of kidney stone management. You know kidney stone management. This is going to hurt for a little while, but it too shall pass. And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, you know, top management, they don't have very much to do. But they work with consulting firms and academics to create kidney stones. And they roll the kidney stones down the organization. And we have to deal with the kidney stone at the same time we're getting our work done. They even create organizations for the kidney stone. And they said, you know, that's what it is. And that's why I started keeping track of the kidney stones. I mean, we can look at Harvard Business Review. We find each of these featured. And I've even helped create some.
Spent 7 weeks learning.
Yeah, for 7 weeks you've been here learning about some of these kidney stones, right? Look at these. And this is really more about how they're implemented, because these are all great things to think about. But what these folks would say is they'd do one month, and maybe 3 months later they'd come with another kidney stone. And I started looking to try to figure out whether I was in kidney stone territory. And if I walked into a site to give a talk, and there was a big sign over the stage and it said, the year 2002, the year of the customer, I pretty much knew I was in kidney stone territory. Because all I'd have to ask was, what was 2001? What was 2000? They all had another kidney stone to tell me about. So what we discovered is these folks really didn't believe. They didn't understand the economics. And why? Why didn't the managers walk the way they talk? First, is they didn't have very good customer satisfaction measures, but much more important was there was really a lack of research that was linking customer satisfaction to profitability. And that's what I want to spend time talking to you about this afternoon. And where did I learn the most? Early on, it was at a credit card company called MBNA. It was a part of Maryland National Bank. We went down and we saw Charlie Cawley, the CEO. And Charlie had been worried about his business because they were growing, but not growing profitably. So they were attracting more and more customers, but the more customers they attracted, the more money they lost. And in the credit card business, you have a lot of the economics that are available to you. You know the mailings you send out. You know, sort of get some idea what your acquisition costs are. You can look at how many people say yes. You can look at their record over a year. You can see how many people renew. You can see the usage and so forth. So, you know, most subscription businesses, you know, if you're in the newspaper business or you're in the magazine business or cable TV or even cellular telephone business, you'd have some of these economics available to you. So the first thing he did was he calculated something I want people to think about, the lifetime value of a customer. And as he did this calculation, he did it on a discounted cash flow basis, but he said, you know, he added this, it's taking us 5 years to break even. We have such high acquisition cost, upfront cost, and we look at the usage pattern and the renewal rates and so forth, it's taking us 5 years to break even. But he also knew one other thing. His average customer only stayed with him for 4 years. This is not a good business model. If you attract customers that take you 5 years to break even and they only stay with you for 4, it's not going to work. So what I want to ask you to do is you think about this particular, we can go back to here. Think about this problem. What options are available to Charlie Cawley to increase profitability of the business? What are some things that he might do?
You can decrease the upfront cost.
So one of the things we might do is decrease the acquisition cost. How do you do that? Huh?
Don't recruit.
Don't recruit. Don't just stop recruiting. Don't try to get new folks in. How else might he do it in terms of getting the acquisition cost down?
Referrals.
Huh?
Referrals.
It might, one of the things we might do is we might get referrals in. But what it's going to, as he went in, one of the things he discovered is that the average customer staying with him for 4 years meant they were losing 20% of their customers every year.
Yeah, retain them.
Yeah, so now this is about word of mouth and retaining. But think about this, you know, losing 20% of the customers a year. Is that a big deal or a small deal? Yeah, well, why is losing 20% of your customers a year a big deal? I'm trying to grow the business.
Because all the expenses in finding new ones.
is in finding new ones. And how many new ones do I have to find before I even grow? At least 20% if they're as good as the one that stayed. I mean, I got a real problem. And he took a look at it and said, wow, so let's just think about this. So one of the things I can do is I can do a better job at retaining them. I can get them to refer. That's going to reduce my acquisition costs. But how do I get them to stay? And how do I get them to give me positive word of mouth? What do I have to do?
Find out why they're leaving.
And now part of the issue here is why are they leaving? So if I'm able to take the 20% of the folks who are leaving, and I'm able to do some sort of root cause about why they leave, and I fix the problems about why they're leaving, what will happen? Huh?
You'd like for them to stay.
Yeah, we want them to stay. Now, one of the things that, so if they stay, what else will they do? They'll stay because of what? Why will they stay?
Because specific qualities.
Huh? Because somehow they're satisfied. And if they're satisfied, the likelihood of them giving us positive word of mouth, what? Goes up. And if they're satisfied, what else will they do? What other behavior will they give us? They'll spend more. Now, if we can get ourselves into this loop, this virtuous cycle of sort of finding out why, fixing the problems, and by doing that, they stay with us more, right? They buy more, and they go tell other people. 3 behaviors. The 3 behaviors are retention. That's a customer behavior. They decide to stay. Related sales, they buy more. They come in buying something, they buy even more. That's the second R. And referrals, the third R. Now, as we were sort of doing this research, we went out and we got some experience from 3 people. The 3 people are Waylon Hicks, who was at Xerox, executive vice president. And what he said is their research showed that someone who gave them a 5 on a customer satisfaction rating scheme of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best score, was 6 times more likely to repurchase than someone who gave them a 4. So someone who gave them a 5 was 6 times more likely to repurchase than someone who gave them a 4. What does that tell you about the shape of the curve of retention in their business and customer satisfaction? A 5 is 6 times more likely. What's the shape of the curve, guys? It's just like that. So it says we have to do the economics, but it appears that the economics move based on the Xerox experience to move people to 5s rather than 4s because of the intent to repurchase. Scott Cook says people just don't understand it. We're working on this Quicken software, and we're doing these things right to get this product right, because if we get this particular product right, and it works the first time, which is computer software that automates the financial lives of our customers, and we are able to boot that thing up and it works, what happens? What's the behavior that we'll get? Or the behaviors that we'll get?
They will recommend the product to
Yeah, he said, we can't compete with the likes of Microsoft for advertising dollars. We have to do it in a different way. So if we get it right, they'll go out and tell their family and friends. And what the real key for us in this early stage is we need to create apostles. Do it so well in terms of what we deliver first, and when they have a problem, when they call in, that they'll go out and tell their family and friends about this. And that's going to bring them in. And then Carl Sewell of Sewell Motors down in Dallas, Texas, said, I had to get this concept across to our folks that we really weren't just selling a car, and we really weren't selling a service interaction. What we were doing is selling a long-term relationship with our clients. And what he did, and how we found him, is he wrote a book called Customers for Life. And he didn't do an elaborate net present value calculation. All he did was he totaled up for the average customers how many cars and how much service they may buy in their lifetime. And he came up with a number of $332,000. And he said, if everyone in my organization, from sales to service, knows that when someone walks in to buy a new car, that's worth $332,000 long term, they'll behave in a lot differently than they had in the past. So what we were getting is we're sort of getting people saying, there really are economics involved with this, that what we're trying to do is we're trying to worry about customer satisfaction levels and the probability as we move these levels that we will get the behaviors that lead to profitability. So it's not about just customer satisfaction scores. The real payoff is if we get the scores and we get behavior changes. If people stay, if they buy more, if they tell other people. As an example, think about this. And it shows you it's part of the problem that Charlie Colley would have had. I start with this hypothetical example. I've got 100,000 customers. And I've put up some satisfaction rating, some percentage that are in each of these categories. 5% of them are very dissatisfied, 5% are dissatisfied, 10% are neutral, 30% satisfied, 50% very satisfied. And this is all just sort of hypothetical. I assume that the probability of retention is pretty low if you're very dissatisfied. Right? And so I call that 0.1. Those who are dissatisfied, 0.2, neutral, 0.3, satisfied, 0.6. If I'm very satisfied, the probability of them staying is pretty high. Now, if you carry that through, what you see is when I start out with 100,000 customers and I have that behavior, I've only got 73,000 customers for the next period. Now, I can play around with this depending on your business, and you put your own business up there and so forth, but when you see that, I say I started with 100, now I've got 73. What do I need to do? And where do I need to put the attention? And one of the things that becomes pretty obvious is it's not enough to drive some of those 4s up to 5s. Right? Because that would be a great behavior change, is to get the 4s up to 5s. Why? Because if I did that, I've driven them up to 5s. I've changed the percentage. Now I've got 5, 5, 10, 10, 70, where before I had 5, 5, 10, 30, 70. What's happened to? Not very much. So what have I got to do? What's the implication?
This is a volume debate, isn't it?
This is a volume debate so far. This is about number of customers. Now, so how do I really look at it? What's the way to look at it? I just did it simply to show you that the number of customers, I don't make up very much by moving them, just by the number of customers. So what do I have to do? How would you want to adjust the analysis?
I'd like to look at the value that each one of these customers generates, the profit earnings that you get from each one.
Yeah, so another way of thinking about this is, remember, as I moved from there to there, you're saying, are there some other benefits? And our research has shown us is that we thought that moving 4s to 5s was the big deal. But it turns out that the big deal is 5s staying 5s. They'll buy a lot more. So one of the things that this analysis just starts showing you is just sort of the numbers of people who stay. But what we really have to find out is what are the buying habits of those people? The 4s we move to 5, and the 5s who stay. And that has to do with the related sales. How much more are they going to buy? And so as we would take our analysis, and we'd have to do this for each of our own businesses, and we'd have to tailor it, one of the things is we might just want to get the retention numbers, but that masks a major thing here is just what's the actual revenue or the profitability. We get on the profitability in terms of the customers in each of those categories, right? Another thing we'd like to do is we want to ask ourselves in the behavior of referral. How do we think that's going to behave as we move from very dissatisfied to very satisfied?
Much higher.
Much higher for the top end, right? And the probability that someone, if I refer a product or service to you, and I'm at the high end, what's the probability of your trying it? Is it higher than if I were at the low end and said something about it? Probably is, right? We could test that, right? So there's another thing here that we could get is the power of referrals. And we could assign economics to new people coming in based on referral. And what will we know about the cost of bringing someone in by referral versus conquest advertising? It's going to be a lot cheaper to bring them in that way than to bring it in, okay? We need to get good data in terms of what happens to retention, whether they stay or not. We need to get good data about how much more they buy in these different categories, and we need to get some good data about their probability of referring, and if someone got referred to, would they buy? Now, what I do know is that if I go back to this chart, when Charlie Colley started this movement, one of the first things he did, and we haven't talked about it, was he said, let's make sure I define what customers we really want. Because we may have a few customers that aren't good for us, and we could never serve them well. So he did a lot about saying, what are the best customers for us? And as he listened to the calls that were coming in, and he read some of the letters, he says, we got about 5% of our customers that are causing us a lot of problems. We should let those customers go because we can't serve them well. Not all customers are good for you. Some customers are a lot better than other customers for you. He said, let's just focus on those that we should focus on. So by doing that, even when he did a mailing, when he decided to invest in recruiting new folks, that recruitment could be much more targeted than in the past. And the offer could be right to that group rather than using a shotgun, started using a rifle to sort of go after the new people they wanted. That, with getting better and better because they were getting the root cause analysis in, the retention rate started moving up a point or two each year. As the retention rate started moving up a point or two each year, the acquisitions costs started getting lower and lower. What happened to word of mouth as they started doing that? That started going, retention rates started getting lower. What happened to share of wallet of this card? It went up, and it would start to keep going up. So as he drove retention rates, he started getting behaviors of word of mouth and related sales. What happened to profitability? Does it go up a little bit or a lot? A lot. In the 6-7 year period that he did this, profitability went up 16 times. And it was a big deal. They moved from being, way at the back of the pack to being one of the leaders in the field. Results as of today. Net income for the fourth quarter of 2001 rose to 524. This is just a quarterly number. An increase of 25% compared with 2000. For the full year, 1.7 versus 1.3. Their earnings have consistently grown on an average of 25% in each of the 44 quarters since they became public. I don't know. Is this good? I mean, I'm not a finance professor, but I don't know. Is this good or is this bad? It seems quite good. If you ask the people at MBNA, what's the secret? And they will say, finding the right customers and keeping them. Now, as we look at this, what do we see? What we see is that this satisfaction with loyalty, it does vary with the amount of competition in the marketplace. For those of you who are in monopoly situations, this doesn't matter. Customers don't matter. They have no choice. They've got to use you. You can abuse them. So if you have a monopoly, or if you have a duopoly, it's not quite as important. However, if you are in a competitive environment, or if you're in an environment that is about to become competitive, because some people who thought they were in a monopoly situation woke up one day and said, uh-oh, I'm electric utility. I have competition. I'm a phone company. I have competition. It switched on them almost overnight from being in the top curve to being in the bottom curve. And it leads to thinking about that space in these dimensions. You've got the people who are completely dissatisfied, but they can't leave. They're hostage. You've got people who are completely dissatisfied and they are out of the door. They're defectors. You've got people who are highly satisfied, but who will leave you for a penny. We call them mercenaries. And then you have the people who are highly satisfied and who are highly loyal. And if you get right up at the top, you've got the people we really want, who are the apostles. So whether you're in a consumer business where you have hundreds of thousands, millions of people that you can put in those categories, and you try to move them up to the top with your actions, or whether you are business to business where you have a finite number of customers, you can put them in that category too. And for those of you in business to business, you can go even one step further, and you can even take the people with whom you deal in that business and put them. So you can take a client, and you can take the client, and you can, down at the bottom right-hand corner, you might find the purchasing agent. Up at the top left, if you're selling some sort of product, let's say I'm an IBM computer salesperson, I go and I sell IBM, and I still have some Mac lovers, right? There are those folks who just love Macs. But we have a company policy that says you can all get IBM. Anybody who's got an IBM up here who loves to have Mac is a hostage. And so what you want to do is identify by individual clients who the players are and how you move more people to the right-hand corner to get the behavior you want by client. So you can do it by client, you can do it by the group of clients, your business, or if in consumer, you can just put them all up there and say, how do I get more to the top right-hand corner? So this is a great exercise. You go back in your organization, invest in some Post-it notes, put the names of the clients, or put the names of the people, have people debate where they belong, and then develop strategies for moving people to the top right-hand corner. And we want to move people to the top right-hand corner. Why? Because when we get to the top right-hand corner, we get the behaviors that we want of retention, related sales, and referrals. And what else do we know? We notice that in most cases you're faced with this curve that looks like this, and that if we analyze what the problem is, the real problem usually is that in the bottom part, you just aren't meeting the basic promise that you're making to the clients. You're just screwing up on the basic promise. In the moving out further, you're resolving those problems with the product, but you're mainly in problem resolution or recovery mode. Only when I could walk into your clients and they would say, I'm in relationship with these folks. They really are providing a solution. We are a partnership. Do we find ourselves in the point that we want to be? So the closing message, pretty simple. You acquire with product or the basic service. You retain with that extended service. But you create apostles with solutions for your clients or customers. Very simple message, but when we create the apostles, we do it because we get the right behaviors. Thank you for your attention.